We're not getting all these prisoners from U.S. anymore. So U.S. actually pays the money. So we don't have enough money to make our payments. We were thinking we were going to get a lot of money, so we spent a lot of money on the palace stuff. It's an absolute monarchy. And I think that the king has about 39 wives, legal wives. I'm not talking about concubines. And suddenly they're not getting the money, and they said, okay, we can't pay. What are you going to do? I mean, one thing you can do, you can hire a private security firm and you can declare war on that country, or you can ask your government to declare war. That's the only way you can get it. I mean, 1998, summer of 98, Russia declared moratorium on foreign currency payments, which basically said, if I owe you in dollars or euros, I can pay you, but I can pay you in rubles. But the exchange rate I'm going to use is the exchange rate the day before I announced it. At that point, $1 got you 6.5 rubles. The day after the announcement, the free markets, it went up to 30, which means Russian ruble lost about 80% of its value. Of course, technically speaking, this is default. What are you going to do to Russia? I mean, they got nuclear arms, for God's sake. Even if they had not, are you going to declare war on them? No. So sovereign credit risk is different from corporate credit risk. And one of the reasons, uh, if a Turkish firm decides not to pay, well, you can only sue them in Turkish courts for bankruptcy, which means they have influence on the political structure. That's why, by convention, it doesn't have to be that way, but that's kind of how the market works. Uh, Corporation ratings have a ceiling, which is the sovereign ratings. And there are three major credit rating companies, and the first two are the historical big two, the Moody's and Standard and Poor's, S&P. Okay. And these companies are not in charity business. They're not doing this credit rating, which is based on a lot of research and effort uh, for the benefit of the market. They actually charge you money. If I'm a US company and I want to issue a bond or even commercial paper, and I go to one of these companies, I say, I want you to attach a credit rating to this issue. And they say, gladly, how about you pay me $1 million or whatever the number is? Same thing with sovereign rating. Government of Turkey decides tomorrow that they're going to issue 1 billion euro 10-year bonds. They're going to have to hire one of these companies and get a rating attached to them, which means you can kind of shop. And if S&P or Moody's are not that favorable to you, you can always go to Fitch. They're the smallest one of them anyway. So they may decide they're going to be a little bit more competitive to generate business. It works even when it comes to structured stuff. I mean, I used to do this quite a bit. The credit derivatives desk that I worked for Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jenrette, which was an American investment bank, they were sold to Credit Suisse in 2001. Uh, we were among the first ones that started uh, French sovereign bonds. Let's think about Russia those days. I think Russian debt before the crash was probably single B, which means it's not investment grade. It's even the lowest grade of the so-called junk bonds, uh, because anything below single B is almost tantamount to default. C and D. Well, I can't. I have a lot of institutional clients. I want to sell these bonds because anytime I do that transaction, you know, I make money from bid offer spreads, this and that, and so I can't sell it to pension funds, which is pretty much the biggest amount of money, or a lot of next is if it's not investment grade, I can't sell it to regular mutual funds. For example, we talked about the uh, sovereign, what was it called, wealth funds. You know, Norway has a sovereign wealth fund around $2 trillion. You know, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and all those oil sheikhdoms also have theirs. They're not going to buy anything that has a C rating or single B rating. Maybe some of the Gulf ones may, but I don't think Norway is going to do it. I don't think, for example, Alaska has a similar fund because they make a lot of money from oil and natural gas, and they put a lot of it into their state fund, so they make distributions to their own citizens based on the income of the fund. They're not going to be allowed to invest into those. So how can I sell some stuff to these guys? You know, single A, let's say, is a place where I can sell them. The other is investment grade. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a three tranche system. One is called the senior grade. One is called the mezzanine senior tranche, mezzanine tranche, and junior tranche. Junior is basically crap. So I'm taking these Russian bonds. Let's say I have 100 million euro worth, and I'm going to put, I'm just making up these numbers, about 60 million into the senior tranche, about maybe 20 million mezzanine, and about 10, the remaining 20 into the crap tranche. Now, there is actually a mathematical way to determine those numbers, but you go to the credit rate company and you start bargaining. Given those numbers, 60, 20, 20, when the money from the underlying bonds comes in, because I'm going to use those to back them up, because I have those $100 million bonds, I'm going to sell claims on those bonds to my customers. When the money comes in, the first 60% goes to the senior tranche.